Hi, I'm a former higher ed CMO, and I have a confession to make. If I had a nickel for every time I heard from either a CMO or a chief enrollment officer that the two entities were not working well together, I could probably retire. And that's why I'm so excited to be bringing in Brandy Kift, who is the Assistant Vice President of Marketing Strategy at Bucknell University, who last year gave a presentation at the American Marketing Association about how she and her colleagues at Bucknell have forged a great relationship between marketing and admissions that has transcended those silos. Brandy is an accomplished marketing strategist with more than 2 decades of experience spanning healthcare, K-12 software, and higher education. At Bucknell, Brandy leverages her extensive background to lead innovative initiatives in branding, reputation building, and recruitment marketing. During her 6 years at Bucknell, she has cultivated a talented team of marketers and content creators whose work has contributed to record application numbers and earned national recognition. I hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast where marketing minds in higher ed come to pull back the curtain, spill a little tea, and talk honestly about what it takes to market in this industry. I'm Jaime Hunt, the founder of Solve Higher Ed, author of Heart Over Hype, and a former campus CMO who spent more than 2 decades navigating the weird, wonderful world of higher education marketing. This show is for the strategists, the storytellers, the change agents, and anyone who has ever tried to get Faculty Senate on board with a rebrand. Here we get candid about the challenges and share the ideas that are shaping the future of our field. Sound like your kind of conversation? Then let's get into it. I am so excited about this conversation with you, Brandy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jaime. I'm happy to be here.
As I mentioned in my confession, I hear from a lot of both chief marketing officers and chief enrollment officers that working across those two silos can be a huge challenge. And in fact, one of my clients mentioned that they saw Brandy present at the American Marketing Association a presentation on how Bucknell is bridging the silo between those areas, and that is one of the biggest challenges, honestly, that faces higher education right now, because there's sort of this there's the marketing, which is marketing, and then there's admissions, which is kind of like sales. And on some campuses, they work really well together. On others, they don't even work together at all. But one of my clients mentioned seeing you, Brandy, present at AMA on the work that you've done at Bucknell on building that relationship. And I would love to hear more about the things you've done to build that working partnership between marketing and admissions.
When I first started at Bucknell back in 2019, marketing was newly established. So my coming in was really at the beginning of marketing being new for Bucknell, where it had previously been focused mainly on storytelling and communications. And that was done really mainly because it was obvious that there was a bit of a decline in applications. And so when that happened more than 1 year, it was clear that, okay, something needs to change. We need to take a different approach. And admissions was on board with that because they too recognized that applications were starting to drop and what they were currently doing needed to change. So when we came in, there was already an open mind to changing the process, which is very helpful. If both teams aren't thinking the same way and agreeing on a path forward, I think that you'll stumble. There will be some roadblocks. But luckily for us, our admissions colleagues were very open to working with us on developing a marketing strategy to increase the number of applications. And so to do that, we worked very closely with them. We didn't come in saying, we know more than you know about admissions marketing. We came in saying, we know a lot about marketing. Let's learn what your needs are as an admissions team and figure out how a marketing strategy can help meet those needs. And so together we worked through that. What were the pain points? Where were there opportunities? And how could we develop some new strategies to address those areas? And in doing so, we didn't do that in the marketing silo. We did that in a room together. So we sat down across the table, working very closely with one another, talking about who are we trying to reach? What message are we trying to get to that audience? What have we tried before that maybe we need to rethink? And how do we want that message to sit with that audience? What do we want them to feel? Do we want them to be excited? Do we want them to take action? And together we built plans and strategies and established new ways of thinking about admissions marketing, and then got to work building that.
I love that. And I think one of the things you said early on in this was you respected their expertise. You didn't come in and say, we know more than you. We're going to take charge here. And I think that's a place where you have to be in that headspace or you're going to be immediately putting people on the defensive. And when people are on the defensive, they're just not going to collaborate. They're going to take their ball and go home, so to speak. I love that you specifically called that out. And I think people underestimate how important that mutual buy-in is. If you're a CMO and admissions is holding you at arm length and they are absolutely completely opposed to any sort of collaboration, my recommendation in that situation is you're going to have to go up and have the president really direct that happens. So I love that you had a scenario where that wasn't the case at all. You mentioned that the organization that existed prior to this switch was really a storytelling, more communications kind of shop. Um, and I'm guessing that didn't go away when you began doing this. And so can you give me a little bit more detail about how you maybe shifted that work to make sure that those stories were aligning with admissions goals?
A big piece of it was our content strategy. And so we didn't stop telling stories. We just changed the way that we were telling them. So a lot of the stories that we were telling were data driven, and we were sharing data points and various stories about things happening on campus, but they weren't necessarily strategically aligned with admissions needs. So, as we were learning about the needs of our admissions colleagues and areas that they wanted to maybe boost applications, we would see opportunities to tell stories that related specifically to those areas. So, for example, if we wanted to increase applications to a specific program, we would seek out a story to tell about that program. So we would be able to find a student who is doing great work, perhaps in our engineering program, and having a hands on experience with a professor and getting to work on a really cool project. We would tell that story. So prospective students could see what it looked like to be an engineering student at Bucknell, to really focus on areas that were impactful for admissions. And if we saw areas and programs that we wanted to grow or places where we wanted to see a boost in applications, we would strategically find stories to tell that aligned with those areas. And one of the things that we changed in our content strategy was finding that story and creating it once, but then being able to share it everywhere. So being able to take a story and tweak it for a social media channel. It could be on our website. It may be in our magazine. And each of those tweaks would change the story, not the meaning of the story, but the delivery of the story in a way that would resonate with the audience on the platform where we were presenting it. So it cut back on the number of stories that we were creating just to create stories, and really allowed us to create meaningful content that could be shared in multiple places for maximum impact.
I love that answer. I love that that's what you did. And I think it's really easy for people on the content strategy side, like maybe they're in that sort of more old school beat system newsroom type setting, which I see on so many campuses, have seen on campuses that I have worked for, and really connecting that with this larger goal of recruiting students, fundraising, revenue generation, and being able to take these stories and repackage them for those purposes. I feel like if you are the content strategy person, or you're the content creator, or you're the PR person, like this is giving your work new life and helping you draw a straight line from the work that you're doing to the goals that are happening in the strategic plan. And in this era of budget cuts and layoffs, having the work that you do be a straight line to institutional goals and institutional revenue generation, I think that's absolutely important right now. I mean, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And we have a lean team. We've never had a big team, and the work that we're able to do, the volume of work and the quality of work is incredible. We have a really great team of high performing individuals, but there's only so many hours in the day. So by being really thoughtful about the work that we're doing, it's protected our team from burnout, really, and it's allowed us to get the most out of everything that we've created.
It's like using all parts of the animal, I guess, in that sort of, you can take a student testimonial or a quote from a story and turn that into a student testimonial, turn that into a short social video, send that out to students who've expressed interest in that major. It's just this constant repurposing and refreshing of content is just, I just think it's so important. And that's one thing, if you're still in a shop where enrollment marketing is seen as really separate from the other work of the office, the enrollment marketing, whether that's in the regular marketing office or in admissions, like these two areas have to be collaborating beyond just the marketing area and the enrollment marketing area. You need to have content strategy involved in that too. Absolutely love that you guys did that. So, one of the things that you talked about in your AMA presentation was the evolution of Bucknell's view book. Can you tell me a little bit more about that process and what you went from and what you moved to?
When I started at Bucknell back in 2019, we had a very traditional view book. It was a large print piece with a number of stories. And beyond just the book itself, it was the process of distributing the book. So it was how it tied into the admissions process. And we followed that very traditional buy a list of prospective students, send them an email, tell them we have this really great view book. If you give us your information, we'll send it to you. And so that is how we promoted the view book. That is how we were able to get prospective students to inquire and to give us their information so that we knew who was interested in coming to Bucknell. And it really wasn't working for a number of reasons. And we looked at the view book and how we were distributing it and saw opportunities in being able to make some changes that shifted to a more, I'd say, student focused practice. So we were able to develop um, a view book using custom view book tool that allowed us to sort of build your own adventure where students can go to this all digital view book and they can put in information that they're interested in, and then they're presented with a digital view book that specifically presents them with their major activities and things that they'd be interested in at Bucknell. So that's a really an instant gratification. It happens very quickly. You don't need to wait for anything to arrive in the mail. We also looked at redesigning the view book that we had and recognizing that print is still important, but the audience that's looking at print might not be our prospective students. So I'm a parent and I know I look at the mail that comes in the door, my kids could care less. So it's um, reaching the parent audience was really important and not excluding them with just having the custom view book for prospective students. So we've redesigned the view book and made it more of a parent piece and provides them with information that is important and relevant to them. But we didn't stop with print for students. We've broken up that view book into multiple pieces that we're now sending out to prospective students where they are in their college search journey. So if they're in 10th grade, we're sending them information that resonates to someone in 10th grade. We're not asking them to apply, but we're giving them information to help them choose the right major and to start thinking about visiting colleges and what they need to be doing now in order to be ready to apply. And so we've developed that stream of communications so that we're touching them multiple times through their college search journey, as well as reaching their parents, so that we've really looked at it as a process rather than just a view book.
It's really, this view book solves the whole student journey, it sounds like.
It meets the students where they are and also recognizes how important parents are in the search process. But it also, I'd have to say, it doesn't necessarily solve everything. I wish it did, but we've recognized that that's just one piece of the puzzle. And it used to be the puzzle itself. It used to be this is
Mhm.
what we did, but now we recognize that it is just one piece of that puzzle, and there's so much more happening digitally and with social media and with email, and just there's so many other tactics that we also employ in addition to the view book because we need to be reaching our prospective students where they are, and they're everywhere. So we have to be everywhere as well.
I was just on a walk with my husband yesterday, and we were talking about how when we were in high school, mail was the only way you could reach us. That's like how old I am. So the email didn't exist yet. Social media didn't exist. There weren't websites to do research. It was truly those view books, and you got them from being on, like, I had a really good ACT score. So I got view books from all over the place. And that was like basically it. Otherwise, you had to like pick up the phone and call and talk to a counselor. And it's just amazing how in 30 something years that has shifted to have all of these other channels that are out there to reach students. And those channels have become really, really essential. And I would love to hear, which of those channels have you seen to be most effective, or is it the mix of them working together? I mean, I suspect it's the mix, but tell me a little bit about how you use the other channels.
It is absolutely the mix. Um, People are using various platforms for different reasons and at different times. And we want to be present on all of them so that we have a better chance of being noticed. And we're competing with a lot of other institutions and other ads and other industries for a very short amount of attention. And so we've really developed a strategy that looks at organic content as well as paid content so that we can really amplify the message that we're trying to reach our prospective students with. And that is that Bucknell is a top liberal arts institution and they should pay attention to us and get to know us a little bit and consider us as one of their top potential institutions. So we've had great success with our student-run Instagram account, which is at I am Ray Bucknell, and each week we have a different student on campus run the account, posting their real life experiences at Bucknell, and that has really resonated with prospective students because it gives them a chance to feel that sense of connection. They're able to see what actual students are doing, and they're hearing from their peers, and they're not just hearing from the marketing team. And so in addition to that, we're also putting out more traditional posts just in a little bit different way, depending on the audience that we're trying to reach through those channels.
Tell me a little bit more about those student run accounts. I would love to hear how you recruit the students for that and what sort of guardrails you might put around the content that they're creating.
So for our Instagram account, the I am Ray Bucknell account, we actually have students coming to us at this point. That has been around for a while. I can't take credit for it. It existed before I came to Bucknell, but it has been very, very successful for us. And we actually have students who will post and say, I hope I get a chance to be on I am Ray before I graduate, because they see it as a really fun opportunity to show their personal experience and life at Bucknell. And so recruiting for that hasn't been difficult at all. We essentially just put out a form and say, if you're interested in being IM Ray, fill out the form and we'll be in touch. And so we do set some guidelines, but we actually hand the account over to them each week. And there is a level of trust there for sure. But so far, it has turned out to be a really wonderful opportunity for both us and for our students who get to be the face of our Instagram account. We do also have a team of social media ambassadors who run our TikTok account. We actually put out sort of an employment posting to recruit them and interviewed them and then hired them on as employees of our team. And they run our Instagram account, and they run our TikTok account and film content and post content, so that prospective students are also getting to see content that is generated by users like them and not people like me who would be their parent.
I love that. Like, it's like when you go to a board meeting and a board member who's like 70 is like, this doesn't resonate with me. Like, that's because you're not 17. It's not supposed to resonate with you. I am not surprised at all that you don't have a hard time recruiting for that position. As I think about my niece who is turning 11, holding up her sign for the first day of school, and her desired job is to be a social media influencer. She would be like all in on being able to be like the influencer for the week. So I'm not really surprised. I guess I'm a tiny bit surprised like you haven't had to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa to any students, or have you had that experience happen?
There've been some instances where we've had to have a conversation and talk about the guidelines for using the account and what's posted. But really, our students have been super respectful and see it as they're representing Bucknell, but also they're representing their own authentic self.
Yeah.
And it's worked out really well. It's been a really great platform um, for both us and our students.
Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 30 to 35% email open rates. The impact was personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. I guess I feel like when I last was the hands-on person with social media, it was, you know, over a decade ago. And I guess Gen Z has always grown up with that sort of, it's going to follow you forever, versus I think like for many of the generations that are older than them or were before them, that was not as, I think, evident that this is, you might be 35 and somebody's going to pull up this thing that you posted. So I would be very curious about whether Gen Z is just like natively more aware of the way that they're presenting themselves on social media. And I imagine, Gen Alpha will follow in those footsteps. I love that. How do you measure the effectiveness of some of these things?
We collect a lot of data, a lot. And we have a person on our team who's our digital marketing strategist. And that is essentially her role, is to collect and analyze the data and to tell us how everything's performing, to give us strategic insights into what we could change, where there's opportunities, and where we have room to celebrate, where there's opportunities to celebrate that something's going incredibly well. And we've had to set KPIs and really focus on them because it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of data that you're able to collect. And so we're looking at, with social media, high level impressions and clicks. And then for paid advertising, we're looking at impressions, clicks, and then were we able to convert? Did someone come to our website and complete a form? And ultimately, did that person apply? Because at the end of the day, that is really our goal. Our team is working at the top of the funnel in brand awareness and driving applications to Bucknell. And then after our prospective students become applicants, we support the admissions process through yield. But we are tracking data throughout because we recognize that our work impacts not just moving a student to apply, but also moving a student to enroll.
I love that. And I think the tools are out there now that allow us to analyze that data even more. Um, how are you guys using AI, if at all, in the work that you're doing?
We're using AI in some new tools that we've implemented. We've just implemented a new AI generated website personalization tool
Ooh,
that is working more at the top of the funnel to generate inquiries as people visit our website, but it's providing them with information that is relevant to them and then delivering additional information to them once they've completed a form. So it's starting the conversation, continuing the conversation, and then allowing us to take over as marketers and really pulling them into the funnel and offering them more personalized communications.
I love that. Where do you see that evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
I wish I had a crystal ball to know how AI was going to evolve over the next few years. It has evolved so much just in the past year that I hope that it continues in the direction that it's going as far as making our work easier and allowing us to focus on the strategy and being creative while AI does sort of the more manual tasks that we've had to do and that it can allow our team to do more.
Absolutely. Like it can really automate those things that nobody enjoys and augment the things that use that human brain power and let you take it a little bit further. And I think there's so much opportunity with AI, particularly in admissions and in the enrollment marketing space, to really differentiate because there's a lot of institutions that are still not really doing much with AI. And if you can take your small team and amplify the work that you're doing using these tools, that's going to allow you to have a bigger impact than some of your competitors, which really that segues me really nicely into like what advice you mentioned. You have a small-ish team. What advice would you give to people with smaller teams or maybe fewer resources if they're looking at making some of the changes that you've made at Bucknell?
I think my biggest advice would be to not think you need to do everything right away because we didn't. It took us 5 years to really implement a robust strategy that had everything from a new video brand anthem to a podcast to an SEO blog to an AI web personalization tool. We didn't create all of that at the same time. We've built this strategy from the ground up, essentially. And I would say, look at where you are now and where you want to be and how are you going to get there? So what does that roadmap look like for you? If you want a podcast, when would it maybe be feasible to think about doing that? And what do you need to have in place in order for that to be successful? Just start building slowly. Implement what you can implement now. Look for the low-hanging fruit and implement that, and then figure out a plan for how you can continue to build on your marketing strategy with the resources that you have now, but also be prepared for if you have an opportunity where perhaps you get a gift to implement a certain marketing campaign or you are able to hire another full-time employee. What does their role look like? What would you do with that role? Just because you don't have it right now doesn't mean you shouldn't be thinking about what you would do when that opportunity comes. Because oftentimes, at least in my experience, those opportunities come out of left field and catch you when you're not really thinking about it and you're not prepared. It's so much more helpful if you can say, okay, now I've planned for this. This is how we're going to move forward.
I think it's always smart to have a wish list of this is if I got asked what I could do with X amount of money, be prepared to answer that quickly. And I think in higher ed, that actually comes up a lot, particularly with things like end of year funds, where you might just suddenly have, somebody from the budget office say, what could you do with an extra $50,000? Or, the president might be like, oh, I really want to juice up enrollment even more than we have been. What could you do with 250,000? Always have position descriptions at the ready. I talked about this a little bit on Jan Giroux's Pulse Check that came out in September, that you always want to be able to answer the fastest because if somebody can come up with how to spend the money, the first person usually that raises their hand and says, I have a way, usually gets the money, at least with end of year funds. But you're right. It can come out of left field. It can come out of nowhere. And being prepared for that and being able to show like, no, I'm not just saying, hey, you gave me this money. I guess I could use it for this. You're able to show how it fits into your roadmap. I love that.
Absolutely. And I do want to add, make sure that you're tracking the success of how you're using those funds so that you can report back and show the impact and show the results of the campaign that you were able to run with those funds.
Yeah, that's so important. The episode that I just did with Carrie Salerno at Babson, we talk a lot about impact reporting, and how important that is for making sure that your partners across campus, your leadership, your board understand exactly how the work you're doing is helping achieve institutional goals. And you're not just sitting there waiting for people to come to you and say, like, hey, can you design a poster for an event that's going to have 5 people at it? They'll be able to see, like, wow, they're doing really needle moving work. I want to like +1 that. One of the things you mentioned was like, this is kind of an iterative process. You're not just like, bam, tomorrow we're going to be doing everything that we want to be doing. Do you see this continuing to evolve sort of in perpetuity? Or is this like you have an end state and you know what that is and you're this month amount of time away from that?
Oh, absolutely. It will continue to evolve. The work that we do has to keep evolving because our target audience is changing. And what resonates with prospective students today and how we reach those prospective students today is going to change in a year or 2 years, maybe even months, because technology is moving, trends are changing, and the work that we are doing has to be keeping up with that. And our goals are changing. And as we evolve as an institution, we need to be aligned with those institutional priorities. And as those goals are changing, our work needs to be changing as well. So that is something I don't see our work ever slowing down. And I don't think that we're ever going to be on cruise control because it's just not feasible in the world that we live in today. And as we move into the enrollment cliff era, we're all going to be competing for the same pool of students. And we're all going to have to be thinking about how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we get in front of the same target audience and grab their attention and pull them into our funnel and build that relationship in order to be able to enroll them as students?
I would love to follow up on that. A lot of times teams get a little bit of change fatigue. Like they kind of want to just be in cruise control. It's comfortable. I'm putting air quotes around easier. How do you manage that change fatigue with your team?
I think our team is so used to it at this point. Like it is just part of our culture. We're always looking for what's the next best thing, what's out there that we could be doing. And we have a very collaborative and creative, open environment where everyone on the team is encouraged to bring new ideas. And if they're seeing something being done in a different industry, bring it into our team meeting and let's talk about how that could work in higher ed and how we could take some strategies and maybe shift them into working in our strategy. So it really it really has just been how our team works. But I think we thrive on challenges and rising to the occasion of being able to produce award-winning work and being excited by the results that our work is able to produce.
I have found that it's really a mindset that you have to foster, and it sounds like you have that. I've had teams full of people that are like, yeah, yeah, better, faster, more impactful. Let's bring ideas from the outside. And then, sometimes I've seen teams where they're like really stuck in the way things have always been. And I think some of that is kind of sometimes people see change with fear instead of seeing it as an opportunity. And I think as leaders, we really have to reframe that mindset as um, this is a place where we care about impact, and this is a department where we care about taking things to the next level and having the most um, efficient and effective work possible. And when you can have that be recognized by leadership, by with awards, with opportunities to speak at conferences, I think that goes a really long way. Um, if there's one thing you could go back and do differently, what would you do?
I would say one thing I would do differently is taking time to celebrate our wins,
Mm,
because as we've been evolving rapidly and trying new things and working on one project to finish that and move to the next project, I think we've missed an opportunity to stop and really celebrate the work that we've done. And that's on me. Really, as a team leader, I need to make that time and make that space. And that's something that I am trying to be much more thoughtful of now that I wish that I would have been thinking about over the course of the past few years. Our team has created some really amazing campaigns and have launched some really fantastic new platforms and have really changed the scope of marketing at Bucknell. And in the moment, we're like, this is great. We did it. And then we move on to the next thing so quickly that I think we need to just pause and breathe and acknowledge that, wow, we were able to create this together. We've accomplished this as a team. This is really great. Let's just take a moment and soak it in and realize, what great work we've done together before we move on to the next project.
that is so smart. I think about every time I've launched a website and it has felt so anticlimactic. Like it's like we put in 18 months of work or we put in 2 years of work and it's done. And now we just start the next thing, like that pausing. In my last role, we did a very intentional like party where we actually celebrated like the website's live. It had a web theme. People had like cobwebs on them. It happened to happen around Halloween where you could get like spider stockings and things like that. But you have to really celebrate those because I think it can feel sort of demoralizing when you're in a situation where it's like, yeah, we did it. Now what? Or as one of my friends puts it, what have you done for me lately? I'm constantly having to do the next thing and think about the next thing without celebrating the last thing. And that can be really impactful, I think, for a team, particularly if you're constantly evolving and changing how you do things. How have you sought to recruit people that have the mindset that you need for the team?
We haven't had to recruit a lot of new team members. Turnover hasn't been an issue with our team. We are filling one vacancy now, and I would say we've had a really fantastic pool of candidates, and just being able to have conversations with them and hear about the work that they've done and understand how they work and how they function within a team, because that is the most important part, I think, for our team is that we're all high performers and we hold one another accountable and we work really well together, and bringing someone new in can change the dynamic, and we want to just make sure that we're bringing in someone who is able to basically hit the ground running. And we joke and say, it's like getting on a treadmill that's already on high speed. So you really need to be running. Like there's no jogging. Um, and so just finding someone who is talented and will thrive in that environment.
Looking for people who don't ever get bored, because when they're bored, they go create something. Those are the kind of people that are like, I don't want to walk on a treadmill where I'm starting at 1 mile per hour. I want to be sprinting as soon as I get on this thing. And there's a lot of great people out there like that. And I think institutional brand can also play a big factor in attracting those people, and your personal brand as a leader, and um, being out there with, this is the kind of team that you're joining and this is the kind of work that we're doing. I think that can make a huge difference. What is the project that you're most proud of in the last 6 years or so?
That's a hard question because I'm proud of so many projects. We've done so much as a small team in the last 6 years, from building and launching a virtual reality tour to creating a new brand anthem that was essentially done in-house, to developing our new concept 3D map and virtual tour, and then just continuing, the all the other projects that we're taking on. All of those are done so intentionally and with such creativity and care to be at the highest standard of work. I'm so proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish, and one that stands out right now is our podcast, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 100th episode.
Wow.
The podcast has really performed above and beyond, I think, what our expectations were, and that was actually people on my team said, "Hey, I think we should make a podcast," and we're like, "Okay, let's try it."
Tell me a little bit more about the podcast. I'm seeing more and more schools adopt this as a tactic, and I'd love to hear what you're doing with yours.
Mhm. It's the Admissions Insider podcast, and it's a collaboration between the marketing team and admissions. So we have a member of the marketing team and a member of the admissions team serve as the podcast hosts, and they talk about topics that are relevant to the prospective student and family audience. Everything from how to create a great college essay to when you should visit and things you should look at when you're visiting a university, and anything else that you can think of that relates to setting them up for success through their college search. We really wanted to position ourselves as a trusted advisor, and the podcast isn't just saying you should consider Bucknell or Bucknell's your, number one option. It's talking about the college search in general and offering advice and information that could be helpful to anyone looking at any institution.
That's so important. I think students and their parents can sniff out inauthenticity or sniff out a sell. And so having something that's providing them with a value add without being so in their face with, and now you should come here. I think that's really wise. How are you measuring that that's successful?
We look at the downloads in the podcast and the shares and just the overall responses that we're getting from listeners and feedback. We've had parents tell us that they've listened to every single episode as they've
Wow.
helped their student through the college search process. And it really seems to resonate with both the prospective student and parent audience. And so for us, that's a big win
Hmm.
because a lot of what we're creating, we're doing it for each of those audiences, and it's done a little bit differently. But the podcast has been one tactic that has resonated across audiences.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's really a diverse needs that those audiences have, but I could see how a podcast would fill both of them very nicely in different ways. If people want to chat with you about all this transition, where can they find you?
I welcome anyone to reach out to me in LinkedIn, or they're welcome to email me. My university email address, which is Brandy, BRANDY .kift, KIFT at bucknell.edu, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
I love it. I love it. And listeners, as always, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, Jaime. You can also find me on my website at solvehighered.com. You can find my book at heartoverhypebook.com. And please do reach out. I love chatting with listeners and hearing more about what you think. And feel free to pitch a guest to the show too. I'm always looking for great guests, people with great stories to tell. But until then, let's go bust some silos. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where Higher Ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and contact drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.